Dan and Corey here, welcoming you into Libservative.
The great fundamental issue now before our people. We, the people, cannot turn back.
Yeah, welcome in to another rousing rendition of Libservative, intellectual idiots fostering political and cultural literacy. Bell the Bodysnatcher on the ones and twos. He is back. Johnny part-time back from his hiatus of fondling dead bodies once again. Thank you, Bell, for being here. He, as always, is Corey Walsh.
He's Dan Griffin.
Why'd you look so confused?
Just spewing nonsense.
Absolute conjecture.
About Bell touching bodies. Objectively, yes, he does touch bodies, but
well, before Bell comes
the
in
idea that he gets pleasure out of it, Dan, is a bit presumptuous.
Corey, all I was trying to do was just stick to the theme of tonight's show, of the media.
Tonight's show about fondling dead bodies?
No, you didn't let me get there. You interrupted before I got there. The theme of tonight's show is the media completely misinterpreting the actions of actual good journalists out there or actual good media members out there. Bell is a good media member. We are good media members. Tucker Carlson, at least some of the time, is a good media member, including what he did last week. Yes, we will be having a long discussion about Tucker Carlson and his interview of Vladimir Putin, what we agree with, what we disagree with, and the happenings in Rafah. And that's probably going to take up our whole goddamn show tonight, Corey.
Probably.
But before we get to any of it, if you are ready, I know you've had a lot of wine tonight. It's Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there. Corey, I got early this afternoon.
I got a little lucky. You know, I planned on enjoying Valentine's Day with my wife after the show, but she came home. She came in the house, and she's like, "Ayo, kids asleep." And you know what? The best wife welcomes you home with open legs, not open arms. Libservative Podcast is found on all social media and podcast platforms. Our website is libservativeshow.com. We can be found at Libservative on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, Instagram and Twitter at LibservativePod. Our TikTok videos can be found at Libservative Podcast, and you can reach out directly at libservativepod@gmail.com. Subscribe today. Like my little quip
years
there,
ago,
Dan.
now,
I saw that.
15 years ago, I was in Washington.
I saw that
press.
I saw that smirk about saying the best wife welcomes you home with open legs, not open arms.
Oh,
it's a good one,
fuck
right?
yourself.
I didn't have to today, Dan.
Hands got a day off, hey? At least the right hand, anyway. Anyway, Corey, what did you learn in school this week? Let's get this started off right.
Oh, we're going with me.
I mean, I'll start. If you're not ready.
Underprepared. I am never underprepared, Dan.
Unprepared.
QAnon is right.
What?
But convoluting this with every other batshit crazy ass conspiracy has muddied the conversation.
Don't get bogged down by all the haters out there.
What I really learned is when conveying a message, keep it concise and try not to correlate it to everything else. Now, the reason why I say this is because recently I learned that human trafficking is a serious problem in Alabama.
In Alabama?
Yeah, as well as the rest of the United States and the world. According to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, Alabama had 285 calls and 100 cases of human trafficking reported in 2021. The highest numbers in 14 years, and most of the cases involve sex trafficking, especially of minors, and occurred in various cities and counties across the state. And the state has taken some steps to combat human trafficking, such as forming the Alabama Anti-Human Trafficking Alliance, passing laws to protect victims and punish traffickers, and raising awareness and education among the public. However, more efforts are needed to prevent, identify, and assist the victims of this heinous crime. And like these are all cited by like Alabama Alliance.alabama.gov.
Mm-hmm.
Enditalabama.org, and like edu websites and stuff. So apparently all of these pompous people, so I have a lot, like I'm still trying to figure out how to articulate this right, because I have there's a million thoughts and angles running through my head right now.
Well, nothing brings up human trafficking talk, Corey, quite like the week after the Super Bowl, because isn't that like the biggest human trafficking event of the year, or at least that's what they say.
No, it's probably right, like because it's always the right wingers that are talking about human trafficking, but the problem is they convolute it with random pizza shops.
Yeah.
And so it just makes them all look like fucking idiots. No, the Super Bowl, it makes sense, right? Especially like Las Vegas. I'm sure the data is not out yet, but really, let's think about it. The first time I have ever seen like a vulnerable like migrant girl was honestly Las Vegas. We had a 4-hour layover there. It was 7 a.m. and me and the girl that were flying to Oregon for a wedding. We had a 4-hour layover in Las Vegas. So we decided, let's go run the strip real quick. And for real, I remember there was like this 12-year-old girl still holding like a teddy bear, like on a corner. And like, I was like, are you okay? Do you need help? And she's like, see, fine. And I was like, oh, okay. You know, like I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So I just let her go on her way. But it was like still like weird. Like I've never had an interaction like that anywhere else in the country. But so I guess what I'm saying is Las Vegas, super close to the border. There probably was some wild shit happening in Vegas, of all places, during the Super Bowl. But anyways, apparently in Alabama, human trafficking is a big deal. But what I really learned is the idea that like if human trafficking is a problem, then focus on human trafficking. Stop trying to muddy the conversation with involving random politicians that live 1,000 miles away from where you're upset about human trafficking in your state and in your city, and quit making it political, because as soon as anything becomes political, everyone picks their side on it, and it just makes the conversation lose its weight when human trafficking appears to be an actual issue. Wait, why can't I hear you? Bell, can you hear him?
No, that damn mute button on the side of my mic, I accidentally just tap it all the time. There we go. I guess what I was trying to say before my mic so rudely turned itself off was
goddamn technology.
It's like the Jeffrey Epstein thing, right? It's like, yeah, you know, I'm pretty interested to know like what the inner workings of Jeffrey Epstein and his client list are, and because obviously there was, you know, human trafficking related nefarious activity going on there. But when all you do is focus on that thing, when that like that one little corner of the problem, when the problem is obviously so absolutely widespread, I don't think you're really helping solve the issue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like when it's a serious social issue, you're not helping the cause, you're only hurting it when you just attach it to a political party.
Right. It's like Democrats are guilty. But then again, I will say this. I mean, like you open this entire what I learned in school with week with a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek QAnon was right. That's kind of how you started it.
Yeah, I was just being a little goofy with it. But yeah, no, like seriously, like the Alabama government is like, hey, yeah, this is a big problem.
Yeah, well, it's very similar to what we always say about Alex Jones, right? It's like, boy, every once in a while he really nails one, doesn't he? Like he really hits the nail on the head every once in a while. But then the critique that we always have of people of somebody like Alex Jones is that like he takes that one thing where he's right, and then he conflates it with all of this other nonsense and completely deludes his point from what it originally was. And that's, I think, a lot about what I think that's basically what you're trying to allude to here with human trafficking.
Right. It almost, it comes to basically like that's why I was like kind of like trying to pontificate. We learned that word tonight together.
You were pontificating, yes.
On the basic premise of the fact that like human trafficking happens. So like stop inventing things to make it seem like it's more prevalent when it's prevalent enough on its own. If you just bring attention to the actual cases, don't be a Jesse Smollett.
Or even just to take it a step further, Corey, like stop using it as a political ploy to get elected, right? Because that's a lot of what it is at the border with the border crisis, right? It's like it's the right, it's conservatives in Congress using it to shit on Joe Biden, which there are many really good ways to do that, right? There are many legitimate ways where you can point out how Joe Biden has done an absolutely atrocious job with the border since taking office. But when it's like, oh my God, the human trafficking and the fentanyl, and just bloviating about this, about these issues that are issues, but they're not the key source of the problem.
Right. Impeaching Mayorkas, as much of a blowhard and how shitty he was at his job, isn't going to solve the problem.
Yeah, it's all a fear-mongering ploy to get elected, even though these things are actual problems. Fentanyl coming over is a problem. Human trafficking coming over at the border is a problem. These are all issues that we all want solved. But like what you can definitely tell from Republicans right now is that they're not actually serious about solving these issues. They're just trying to make Joe Biden look bad. And it's like, dude, he does that really, really well on his own. I don't think you need to do that if you instead of actually trying to come up with a plan to solve a problem. Because we talked about this, I mean, probably multiple times now, but certainly right after the 2022 midterms, is that the Republican Party is it's just a party of grievances. It's all about all of the bad things that Democrats and wokeness and all these bad things that they do. And they're not wrong about those things, but there's never a solution. And to your point, Corey, to your what I learned in school this week, I feel like that's a lot of the chatter around human trafficking as well. It's a lot about like, oh my God, we have this huge problem. It's like, okay, yeah, you're pointing it out. I see it. What are we?
No, because I like Detroit's actually, I think Detroit's one of like the biggest human trafficking hubs like in the nation, isn't it?
It makes sense. It's a border city.
Yeah, it's frustrating, right? Because like it's clear that human trafficking is a problem, but you got the Q-tards with the QAnon. And everyone, like, they don't actually want to solve the problem. They just want to get the clout, the social media hits, of pointing it out.
Look at how big of a problem this is.
Yeah. Look how big of the problem this is. It's clearly all Democrats.
Yeah.
When it's like, no, there's probably Republicans involved too. And it's like, fuck the Democrats involved and fuck the Republicans involved. Comes to a lot of it's funny how so many of these issues are issues that like if everyone stopped dividing everyone into little tiny tribes about the issue, it could be solved, but it's not. Like poverty,
not solved. I mean, like, human trafficking, like you said, Corey, human trafficking is one of those things that you're probably never gonna solve.
No, my God, you could alleviate
it. More should be done. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, a little more could be done if, like, instead of having trivial arguments about who's at fault about it, blaming each other, get the ones who aren't involved in the mudslinging to just be like, hey, let's try to solve this. You know what I mean? Like,
or at least
like poverty, like homelessness, like the incarceration that we have through our country with the prison industrial complex. It's like, yeah, the ratios are really fucked up. Like, Black people make up 13% of our country, yet they make up a huge percentage. I don't know the exact number, so I didn't say it, but they make up a huge percentage of the people in prisons. But just because there are so many more white people in our country, they do make up a larger population. And then you hear people that they make arguments like, well, there's more white people in prison than Black people, so it's obviously not a race issue. And it's like, no, what you're saying is like there's way too many white people locked up. Let's actually try to solve the problem.
Yeah.
If you don't want to solve the issue for a racial problem, solve it for yourself. Because you see people all the time where they're like, oh, 80% of Black people are killed by Black people. It's like, yeah, well, 90% of white people are killed by white people. Those two numbers might be reversed or whatever. It's like, like 2,000 people were killed. Yeah, exactly. You get what I'm saying. But it's just like, I get so sick and tired of people making it tribal issues based on aesthetics. I don't know. Like,
you want to talk about tribes?
Why is that? What
what I learned in school this week? This one, I learned a new, I guess, would you call it a word or a phrase? A phrase, because it's 2 words, and I love it. Have you heard this phrase before? Fetishized oppression. Have you heard this before?
I haven't.
It's okay. It's okay, because I'm going to show you.
Wait, I might have. Like, only because
brilliant Instagram video from a female Iranian attorney. I saw this video and I was like, I probably watched it like 13 times. I'm just going to share it, and then we can discuss. Where did it go? Here we go. Are we up? Am I up? Are we good?
Yes.
You are asking me to explain what the problem is with the TikTok generation that's been swooning over bin Laden, deciding now to put on hijabs and call themselves Muslim. First of all, you cannot just put on a hijab and call yourself Muslim. You cannot just put on a yarmulke and call yourself Jewish. There is an onboarding process. The purpose of the onboarding process is to prove your commitment to the faith. That's beside the point. This isn't a case where somebody has observed the practice of a faith over time and decided that maybe this is something that they're interested in. Where is this coming from? Where this is coming from is the perverse fetishization over oppression in the Middle East and a desire to dissociate from the stigma of privilege, the stigma of Western privilege. And so it's intended to adopt the identity of the oppressed. It's not just appropriating religion, it's appropriating oppression. And the problem with that is that you are not actually having to experience the reality of oppression. They're saying that they're willing to go and live under Sharia law and they're not going to miss their Western privileges, but they don't actually seem to be willing to go. So they are bypassing the experience of oppression in order to cheat to the benefit of oppression, sympathy. The second thing is this idea, this Western privilege, which is essentially just democracy. It's the ability to have free speech. It's the ability to vote. It's the ability to choose your religion. It's the ability to choose what you want to wear, right? That is what people in Iran are paying the price with their lives to fight for, paying with blood currency for freedom. They're having their eyes taken out for freedom. They are being lynched from cranes for freedom. And for those that are saying that, we're not ashamed of the Western privilege of democracy, what we're ashamed of is the West's bloody and violent history of conquests and colonization. Okay, well, the identity that you are assuming, that you are appropriating, comes from a region with a very, very extensive history of bloody and violent conquest and colonization. So if you want to appropriate oppression, then appropriate the whole identity, appropriate the lived experience. Because if you did that, then you know that the people that you are impersonating are killing themselves to fight for the liberties that you not only take for granted, but wish you didn't have. So people are asking me to explain.
It's a pretty powerful video, right?
Oof.
It's pretty good, right? And like obviously she's speaking about this from like I guess like a Middle Eastern or a Muslim point of view, as far as like appropriating oppression and saying the West is so bad, and you know, so what I'm looking for, I guess fetishizing the victimhood. That's kind of the way I read it. Like I read into it like a lot of what we see in the United States right now, as far as like race is concerned. Like when I get like when you and I, Corey, get like really fucking, I mean, just vomit at the top of our throats when we hear like some Upper West Side wine mom bitch about racism in the South when she's never set foot there. She has, and all she's doing is doing it for just the social media clicks and the clout and everybody telling her what a strong-willed ally she is.
Yeah, so
And like,
that part right there, that's the part that I get stuck on. When someone is speaking about any sort of oppression or any sort of structuralized racism or any sort of like actual like racism, like when it comes to society and stuff like that, that's fine. But when someone projects their own virtue signaling or their own like grift on top of it is what frustrates me. When somebody decides to so I lost my train of thought there.
Appropriate oppression.
Yeah, that's
this young lady said in her
pretty
video.
much what I'm looking for. Yeah, when a white person tries to white knight their way into something,
White savior complex.
yeah, exactly. The white savior complex. When sometimes it's important just to stay in your own lane
And listen for a second.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about this all the time. Like when you if you actually go out and speak with somebody of, let's just say that's just non-white, right? About these kinds of things, you don't, unless you're like on a college campus or maybe like walking through Times Square, you're not gonna get a whole lot of the white people are fucking evil answers.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get that.
And then
out of
I'm
most of them.
also, to all of our white listeners who don't know very many black people, because
We have all white listeners. Let's be honest.
based on the demographics of our country, that might just be a reality for you, right? Don't base all of your opinions on any other culture based on like what MSNBC or ABC or Fox News or any of
Or
these
Robin
news
DiAngelo or
tells
Ibram X.
you.
Kendi or any of these other,
Because
racial grifters.
If you do that, short of like a 20-second elevator ride, like, hey, how are you, sir? How's it going? You're going to look like a fucking idiot.
Fetishized oppression.
But what I find interesting about this is, so I remember, it was probably 2016, 2017. I was at Hopcat when Hopcat was open for a brief period in Royal Oak, Michigan. Which,
It's back, by the way.
In Michigan? In Royal Oak?
Yeah.
Same building?
It's where, not that anybody knows where this is. It's across the street from Fifth Ave.
Where the old Woodies used to be.
Yep.
So they closed, but they came back.
I was just there 2 weeks ago. Anyway, go ahead.
And
it's back.
They still got the rooftop bar.
I don't know.
Now I'm just excited because I love the rooftop bar.
We didn't go up there.
Okay.
It's fucking February. We didn't go up there.
If you're not from Metro Detroit, then you don't know what the fuck we're talking about. But anyways, I remember being at Hopcat on the rooftop bar in Royal Oak. And it was right when I first started getting into politics. And I heard two people like an earshot of me talking about politics, and it had me intrigued. And this one guy who had an accent, I couldn't pin the accent exactly, but he had an accent. He was talking to another guy, and the other guy seemed to kind of shake his head and walk away. And I was like, so what were you guys talking about? Were you talking about politics, right? And he ended up being from Germany. And he was like, yeah, we were. And I was like, oh, I'm interested in that. And then he kind of scoffed at me. And he told me, and I didn't appreciate this at the time, because at this time I thought that like my liberal views, 8 years ago, were like the gold standard, right? And
a lot of people still feel that way, Corey.
And he told me, he laughed at me and he said, you Americans and your privileged view on politics, you have the privilege to sit here and argue about such trivial things when the rest of the world is dealing with the real issues. And I didn't understand what he meant at the time.
That's interesting because we kind of still do that.
We absolutely. Oh, us?
Nothing has changed. We argue about, who gets to go
well,
into what
us
bathroom.
like as Americans, yes, I'm saying, but you and I on our show, I think we try to dive deeper. Like we try to go through the reads and avoid that type of shit. But like America as a society, yeah. Like we argue about such dumb things because we're so fucking privileged.
Corey, I just want to say, like, I love the look on your face right now. You've been frozen for like 2 minutes. I can still hear you.
You're frozen too.
Somebody's fucked up. Whatever. It doesn't matter.
It's
Bell's
just
not
Corey.
frozen.
I'm not frozen.
Okay.
I'm good. It's just Corey to me.
That's
Dan's
right.
frozen to me. Bell's frozen to me. Everyone's frozen to me.
So it's all you, dude. It's all you. Now you're the
you.
you're the one. Now you're the one with the connectivity issues.
No, not necessarily. It's just my
I
camera.
can't get it right.
It's so funny when the dial-up sound plays, nobody can speak.
I wonder what the audience sees, because like I said, like you're all frozen to me.
You look like this.
Yeah, yeah, okay, good job. Do that face again because I can't fucking see it.
Oh man.
Oh, I forgot.
Do it again.
Yep.
Do it again for me real quick.
Liberty Twitcher says it's only you that's frozen.
It's only me.
Yep.
Fuck, my whole.
Well, why don't you back out and come back in while Bell tells us what he learned in school?
Can you handle that? Can you guys handle that?
Can you sure about that? Yeah, we can handle it. Bell and I got
sure
it.
about that?
I have to close out Chrome.
You sure about that?
I'll be back in a second, boys.
What a disaster. Bell, write this listing.
I'm good. My face looks beautiful, even with that glazed ass fucking
That's debatable.
face.
Anyway, Corey, you regroup. Bell and I will take over. Bell, what did you learn in school this week?
Usually I'd come in.
Can I just say this while Corey's
good.
gone, though? Can I just say this while Corey's gone, though? It's fucking beautiful that it's his internet that fucked up. He's the only one
I know.
that hasn't had an issue. Anyway,
He's
go
in
ahead.
the club now. I usually hit you guys with some sort of history lesson about some weird history, but I was thinking today, America can't have anything nice, even if we have something nice.
I'm listening.
Before the Super Bowl, it's like we have the Super Bowl. We're the only country in the world that has a sporting event where everybody's like, we're all going to watch fucking football on this day, and that's all we're going to do. No, they got to complain about the Taylor Swift thing. Who's in the Super Bowl? Blah, blah, blah. And then the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl. They have a parade today, and then 22 people get shot at the parade.
Holy shit. In Kansas City? I didn't realize it was that much of a crime hub. Boy, I guess Ron DeSantis was right.
Well, I don't know if it is, but so the parade, one person died. There's kids that got shot. And then it makes me think, when you think to like all these other things that we have that are actually nice, because we don't have that many things.
I'm back.
Always something terrible about them, according to somebody. It's just really tiring.
No, that's a good point.
That's what I learned.
It all comes from a point of privilege.
I was gonna say, is that our privilege showing? Corey took the words right out of my mouth, because like I was annoyed with the Super Bowl too. It was so funny. The three of us were actually texting during the Super Bowl about like who's gonna be offended by this halftime show. Somebody's gonna be offended. Like some like subgroup of people is gonna be offended. And we determined that it was the trad cons. It has to be like the Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Dennis Prager style trad cons that were offended by the halftime show because there was demonic imagery in it.
Right.
It could have been anybody else. Nobody else could have been offended.
I mean, we were making fun, but there's like people that are genuinely mad about Taylor Swift, and it's like
it comes down to the LeBron thing. I don't know who I'm more upset with. The people that
I figured it out, Corey. I can answer this. Right? Because I've been going over this. I'm like, okay, so why am I actually in? Because I'm one of the people that was annoyed, but I'm a football fan, right? I sit here and watch Red Zone every week, which basically means I watch all the games.
Do they show Taylor on Red Zone?
I mean, she pops up every once in a while, but the Chiefs are on.
Oh wait, really? On Red Zone? Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, because they're all they're doing is showing the broadcasts on Red Zone. They're just kind of going back and forth between games. So occasionally you'll see her pop up at the end of a play.
$300-something million.
Yeah, 330.
But I'm like, why? Why am I actually annoyed with Taylor Swift? And I came up with the answer that I'm not. I mean, I find her annoying, but I can just like avoid her. Like, so it's not like a hateful thing. Yeah, I find Taylor Swift fucking annoying. I think she's void of any kind of personality. Her music isn't very good. She rhymes car with bar like 65,000 times in all of her songs. Her music isn't good. I don't understand why she's so popular. I understand she's pretty. She's obviously quite attractive, and that's probably part of it. However, is it Taylor Swift that I'm actually annoyed with? And I figured it out like during the Super Bowl. No, it's not her. You know what it is? It's you people. It's not you people. It's the Swifties. Her fan base is the most annoying, insufferable fan base in all of Hollywood or music or anything, because you are not allowed to not like Taylor Swift. And the minute you say that you don't think her music is that good, she's a philanthropist. She's the only billionaire out there or multimillionaire out there who pays her people a living wage and yada. They just virtue signal all day long about why she's so great and so awesome and you should love her. And if you don't, you're a fucking fascist. It's not Taylor Swift that I am actually upset with. It's the fan base. It's Swifties that annoy the shit out of me.
So Dan.
Yes, go ahead. I went off. I got a little red face there for a minute.
Yeah, you got your britches a little bunched up there. The reason I think so in my personal life, the reason why I think so, that there's three things. There's like basically two things that I'm very opinionated on, right? It's politics and country music, right?
Yeah.
Taylor Swift is one of the only ones I know that did the hard switch. And instead of trying to pretend her music is still country, she's like, no, I'm pop now. Whereas there's 100 other artists out there who are basically making country music with boom bap traps or boom bap beats, who are trying to pretend that they're country music, but they're really not. They're just pop songs with a little bit of twang. But she actually cut the ties. So I've always had respect for Taylor Swift for that. Other than that, it goes back to our conversation we had roughly about a week ago, how like when it comes to a lot of the culture shit, I don't have the energy. My ADD doesn't let me even have a chance to get upset about it, because I'll see a thing about Taylor Swift and I'm like, what? No, that's fucking weird. And then all of a sudden I'm on to something else.
True, because when we talked last week, you didn't even know who Tracy Chapman was.
I already forgot.
She's the original composer of Fast Car.
What?
The famous Luke Combs
I was
song.
kidding. That was a joke. I forgot.
Among other great Emmy-winning titles, but that is probably her number one song ever.
You got a fast
It's a big ass glass of wine, bud.
Yeah, this is like my third one. I told you I started doing.
I will say this. You know what I love? I don't know if I've said this once before, but what I love about Bell's, what I learned in school this week, I feel like it gets you and I both talking more than either of ours ever do.
What was his? What I learned this week, because I completely missed it.
That we can't have nice things even when we have nice things. He was talking about how the Super Bowl is great and we don't appreciate it.
God damn, Bell, that was some really good fucking improv. That's what that was. Because in our private chat, he says, "Skip me." I have nothing. And so when I cut out, I went from "skip me, I have nothing" to coming back to apparently Bell had the best goddamn fucking what I learned in school this week.
I don't know if it's best, but it gets us talking. Sometimes is this
got
a
you worked up
now?
Who, me?
Who, me?
No, Dan was worked
up
a little bit.
Dude, I'm literally riffing. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I wasn't here for the last 5 minutes of this conversation.
You're good. You're good.
Well,
You're
I was just talking about
good.
how we
I'm
can't
great.
have anything nice. Everything that we have that's nice isn't nice.
It's not nice enough.
You know what I mean?
Can't have nice things.
Yeah.
We don't deserve it.
Good is great is the enemy of good.
No, the perfect,
and the fact
is
the fact that we get to bitch about that should give us a moment of reflection.
That's a great. That's an absolute great segue. The fact that I got to sit here and like not and say that it's not even Taylor Swift that I don't like. It's her fans that I don't like. Just makes this country fantastic. And guess who?
Dan over here solving all the world's problems.
Not at all, but Tucker Carlson is solving some of them in certain ways. Tucker doing a little ballroom dance with Vladimir Putin. Corey, I know you.
Are you sure it wasn't a waltz?
I might have been a waltz. It could have been a little bit of swing. I think that might have been outlawed in Russia, though. But anyway,
hey, Bell, will you look up and see if swing is actually banned in Russia?
I doubt it, but I watched the entire interview over the course of 2 days. I had to split it up because as I talked about in our show meeting last night, Corey, it was the most interesting yet insufferably boring interview I have ever seen. It was both things. And I know you listened to the whole thing, so you at least heard it.
I was about to bring that up, that it's interesting that you watched it. I only listened to it.
I watched it. I want to start here.
Is that a Modelo?
It is a Modelo.
Nice.
Somebody snuck it over the border for me.
Attaboy. I do that with Yinglings.
The state border. That's great. I like that joke. That's a good joke. I didn't laugh, but it's great. I wanted to start with I was listening to the abbreviated version of Matt Taibbi and Walter Kern's podcast, America This Week. They put out a free version every week, and they only go for about a half an hour. But a lot of it was they were talking about the Tucker Putin interview prior to it actually airing. It had already taken place, but it hadn't aired yet. And Walter Kern.
Not banned.
The waltz
ring is
breaking news. The waltz is not banned in Russia.
I thought we decided swing.
Swing is not banned in Russia.
Yeah.
It don't
anyway,
mean a thing if it ain't got that swing, Dan.
Walter Kern, if you'll just shut up for a minute. Walter Kern said when he was talking to Matt Taibbi with predictions for the Tucker Putin interview, one of the things that you're going to see is within the first 5 minutes, you're going to see a debunking of so many narratives surrounding Vladimir Putin, just like I said, within the first 5 minutes. And so, respecting Taibbi and Kern as I do, as I'm watching this, I'm looking for these things. And Walter Kern fucking nailed it. He absolutely nailed it. So, God damn it, my notes are out of order. Okay, so here we go. Various examples of never mind. Anyway, doesn't matter. I'll give you the examples off the top of my head.
Doesn't even matter.
This idea that like Putin is ill, right? He's riddled with all this cancer. I don't know about you, Corey. I know you saw a little bit of the video. Thought he looked like a reasonably healthy man for his age. I didn't see anything that's yeah.
When I saw him in the videos, I didn't look at him and go, "Oh fuck!" Like he wasn't Dianne Feinstein. He wasn't Joe Biden.
I think, oh man, he is on his death. Yeah, I was gonna say certainly looked a lot healthier than our own leader. Yeah. If I do say so myself.
Because Trump weirdly looks actually healthier now than he did when he ran for the first presidency.
Oh man, I don't know. Maybe calm down on the amphetamines.
No, he just covered his face in baby blood, brother. Interdimensional space demons.
Another example of a debunked narrative about, and I want people to understand this isn't like a defense of Vladimir Putin. What I'm saying is that like there are just like with any of our own politicians, there are a million reasons to look at a guy like Vladimir Putin and not believe what he says or critique him for sure. This is just another example of like, why does the media need to lie to you about this stuff? Why do they push this shit so hard when we're looking at it and it's not true? Another example of it is that Putin is this just like babbling Hitlerian figure, right? Because like if this was an interview of Hitler, he would have been absolutely babbling and maniacal.
Right.
Vladimir Putin throughout this interview was, I mean, obviously spewing a ton of propaganda, but like he was a guy that held his stuff together and made reasonable points from his perspective.
Yeah. So
you have disagreements with them. Go ahead.
So before I forget this point I want to make, ultimately, what our media does is try to really paint Putin as this one-dimensional, binary, bad person, when in reality, he is no different than any leader we have in the West. He's a political leader. He has a narrative to push. He has things to say to not only cater to his base, but also has to make sure his detractors don't necessarily disagree with him. You know, like he's literally a multidimensional figure that we see with any figure on the left that literally tries to paint him as this dunce or just as just a warmonger or as just all like single word phrases people use on people that you see in our own country, in our privileged society, that we use on either side of the spectrum.
Yeah,
does that make sense? What I'm saying? Like he gets diminished.
Just to add to
he's
that,
actually a pretty smart person.
You're absolutely right, Corey. It is this conscious effort to try and dehumanize and minimize him. And honestly, like as somebody who's been a president of a moderately powerful country for 20-something years, or 30 years now, 24 years, because he was elected in 2000. So like in some ways, I understand, dehumanizing him from the perspective of he's just another politician, and I don't think politicians are humans to start with. But like this narrative that he's very ill, the narrative that he's like this unbelievably Hitlerian figure who's going to start a nuclear war or invade Poland next. And it's like, if you just listen to what this man has to say, you can clearly tell that he is nothing more than the leader of a country who is doing what he thinks is best for him and his own people in Russia. You don't have to agree with his tactics for making that happen. But when he explains himself on Tucker with Tucker Carlson, disagreement is okay about like what the facts are, but he clearly he portrays himself as a man who is doing legitimately doing what he thinks is best for Russia, just as you would hope a United States president would come off as doing what they think is best for the United States. And by the way, in the last 30 years, we know that that's not the case with a lot of our leaders, where they're doing what they think is best for the pocketbooks of Raytheon, Boeing, and others, and now trying to preserve the petrodollar. I guess what I would say is that I don't feel like Putin is any more dangerous of a fucking politician than anybody that's sitting in Congress right now. Is that unfair? Am I being unfair by saying that? No. Am I a traitor because I said that? I think he's a piece of shit politician. That's what he is. All it really comes down to, right? And a brilliant propagandist. He is so good. Okay, so one of the biggest takeaways that I had from this interview is that Vladimir Putin, I guarantee you this is the case. Vladimir Putin knows more about U.S. history than the average American. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
No.
I don't think there's any doubt about Vladimir Putin's worldview and view of not only global history, but U.S. history being better than that of the average American.
No,
he's
because
not a stupid man.
What he brought up, what did he bring up? He brought up Texas, I think, right? In the interview. He brought up something. That? Putin brought up, I think.
The border.
Yeah, the border.
Like he knows more about our politics than most Americans do. The border, the national debt. How many Americans do you think can even come close to the, like, if you just walked up to a person on the street tomorrow, just pick a person and said, hey, what's the U.S. national debt right now? How many of them do you think would look at you with their eyes glazed over
and say, well, it might be like 35 trillion.
I mean, you might run into somebody that would say that, but I bet you if you ask 10 people that are our age, 35 and younger, I bet you at least 5 of them would have no clue, not a clue, what the national.
That's actually a good social experiment. I want to do that now.
But yet Vladimir Putin knows. And the takeaway that you get from the media before we get into the meat of like what we thought about this interview, it was, you saw it before the interview even aired. It was wrong to watch this. It's wrong to watch it because Tucker, and they keep saying this, they keep pushing this, this phrase of like, it's not Putin. It's not listening to Putin that's the problem. It's the person that's interviewing him. It's that Tucker Carlson is interviewing him. That, right. Because that somehow diminishes what Putin has to say. And not only that, if you're really pushing it far into to the way that Americans are propagandized, it's this idea that we've talked about multiple times on this show, Corey. You are too stupid to hear what Vladimir Putin has to say because it's dangerous. It's too dangerous.
That was definitely exposed when everyone was freaking out at the idea that Tucker Carlson was going to interview Putin. It could be a botched job of an interview. Who gives a shit, right? Who cares?
Yeah.
We can decide that for ourselves. But for the government and for the media and for everyone to go, no, don't even look at this.
Yeah, and to be fair, like Tucker has I have weird mixed feelings about Tucker. I mostly think he's a net positive at this point. However, he has said
strictly
weird things
because he actually got the Putin interview. Before that, it was net neutral.
I guess the Putin interview put him into a net positive. But like he has said some weird things like why and like these are his, I'm pretty sure these are his exact words. Maybe I'm paraphrasing, but he has said things like, why shouldn't I root for Russia in this war? Because that's how Tucker's portrayed, right? He's portrayed as this Putin puppet, right? He's portrayed as this person who just loves Vladimir Putin. I don't think he's really said a whole lot that would suggest that. But yeah, saying things like, why shouldn't I root for Russia in this war? Because he really did say that. Like,
He
that's
said that
a little
on
bit
Fox,
weird.
right?
I don't remember. It might have been. But like, and that's just it, right? Like, it's okay to critique Tucker and be like, I don't think he's going to ask any good questions, or I don't think he's going to challenge Vladimir Putin. Like, those are legitimate criticisms. But when you stretch it out to like, you shouldn't watch this because you're too stupid and these ideas are too dangerous. Now we're getting into Orwellian territory. There's no reason for, is your sign blinking?
No, you want to know the one I was really looking at? It's really stupid.
You think you have a ghost?
No.
You're looking for the NSA behind you?
No, there's foam right here that's supposed to be on top of this white thing, and it looks like it, like, through using this snowboard, the foam fell off to the side. That's it. This shouldn't even be on the show. It's dumb. I just noticed it in my camera.
That is Corey's ADD coming out hard right there.
Yeah, that's
Vladimir
what that
Putin.
was.
Oh, a squirrel.
Yeah, it's like, oh wait, no, that's gray foam. I know what that's for. It's not supposed to be there.
Yeah. And I get the other interesting thing about this whole thing too, Corey, is that like others have tried to interview Putin and Putin won't talk to them. So maybe that's a little bit of an indictment on Putin. He has been spoken to, but I think the last one was like 60 minutes.
Yeah, no, which is interesting, right? Like he clearly knew Tucker would be a little bit of a softie on him, right? Like, I'm sure Matt Taibbi. No, who do you think who else? Like, okay, no, all right. So now I'm kind of talking myself out of it, right? Like, yes, Tucker might give Putin softball questions for the access of that interview. But who else in the media landscape in America would actually seek out an interview with Putin? Even people we respect, that's just not what they're doing, right? A Barry Weiss, a Matt Welch, a Michael Moynihan, a Camille Foster, a Matt Taibbi, a Michael Schellenberger. Like, some of them might be interested in this interview. Even an Aaron Mate or, like any of these guys. But
Glenn
none
Greenwald.
of them. Yeah, Glenn Greenwald. Like you could keep naming people. You could just keep naming them of journalists we respect. But none of them have actually did the legwork to make it happen. And Tucker did. And so, unfortunately, the Tucker Carlson's the best we got. But you know what? We got to hear for 2 hours Putin's responses to how he sees the Ukraine issue. And what that does, that's a net positive to the conversation. Because, there's certain things that Putin said in this interview that are really important to the American people. And one of the things that I could take away from that's more important than anything else is Putin saying he's not interested in nuclear war or Poland. Because mainstream media here in America is constantly pushing the idea that Putin is wanting to start nuclear war and he wants to invade Europe.
Yeah, and he gave to piggyback on that, Corey. He gave his sort of version of Russian history, which he knows very, very well. I think he demonstrated himself
right.
Because I'm not gonna sit here and act like I know the first 10 things about Russian history. I know more probably than the average American
because you listen to this interview. But the basic synopsis is like, oh yeah, Ukraine and Russia, like, borders in the 800s weren't so solid, and then there was a bunch of dynasties and there was a bunch of empires, and Ukraine was kind of always a part of Russia until the last 50 years.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
objectively, that's true.
He gives his spiel about like why he felt like he was historically justified to invade Ukraine, combined with, NATO expansion, and combined with the Maidan coup from 2014, which actually started essentially a civil war in Ukraine, which Americans to this day, so many of them don't even fucking know about, where you have Ukrainians blowing up ethnic Russians, and Putin rolls in and, says that he's defending these people. Now, I mean, how much of it's bullshit? How much of it's propaganda? A lot of it's propaganda, because Putin is a masterful propagandist. He is very good. I mean, he even had me convinced. He even had me convinced a couple times during this interview before I was like, wait a minute, this is Vladimir Putin. Like, let's just back the truck up and take this with a grain of salt for a second. But he is, man. He's really good at that.
Because
honestly,
that's
Corey,
just it, Dan. He's no better than any masterful politician we have in America.
No, he is, because he's better at what he does.
Right, but just if you treat him with the same skepticism that you do any politician here in America, then all of a sudden he's not going to have you fucking waving around the hammer and the sickle.
Mm-hmm.
Like our government, who is also full of masterful propagandists, would make you believe that that's all Putin is doing is fucking waving the hammer and the sickle. It's like, you know what? Yeah, it might be propaganda, but let me hear propaganda that's not my propaganda. Because then between the two propaganda machines, I might be able to find a small kernel of truth. And if my propaganda machine is worried about the other propaganda machine spewing their propaganda better than my propaganda, then maybe I should go, there might be something going on here.
Yeah, and that's that's it. I don't really have anything to add to that, other than just, I guess, to move on to Putin's ability to propagandize. He discusses a lot about various examples in which he tried to work with the United States, right? He talked about having a good relationship with George W. Bush. He talked about Russia. This would be obviously before Putin was president, but Russia trying to join NATO.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a rhetoric question, but the idea that he asked Clinton, "Hey, how about Russia just joins NATO?"
And then we blew him off.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly though, Corey, like, there's probably more to that than what Putin said.
Oh, absolutely.
But like, it does make sense that the United States, just knowing what we know now, that the United States would be like, yeah, I don't know if that's such a good idea.
Yeah, knowing what you know now, based on everything you know about our politics and the way our country works, regardless of this interview, if I said this to you before the Tucker interview and I said, hey, if tomorrow Russia asked America if they could just join NATO, what do you think America would say? You'd probably be like, oh, they would tell them to kick rocks.
They would absolutely tell them to fuck up. And like,
the other thing he mentions that I thought that was worth noting is when he mentioned America was working on missile systems because of this was post 9/11, that America and NATO was working on missile systems, and Russia was like, hey, let us work on these missile systems with you. And America was like, no. So then Russia was like, well, then we're going to have to work on systems that will combat that then. And then we go, oh, that's Russian aggression.
Well, and okay, so like how much of it is true and how much of it isn't, because it the way Putin portrays it is like, hey man, like, we've tried to work with the West forever and they just keep rejecting us, and they keep rejecting us. And I think it's important to know that is, whether or not it's true is irrelevant. It's important to know that is the way Putin sees it.
Views this.
Like, that's what's important.
And that's very important.
That's absolutely important. And like, a lot of his defenses for the war in Ukraine and other, I guess, economic and other types of aggressions towards the West for 24 years now, a lot of it is stuff that we hear right here in the United States. And Putin points that out about how I guess I'll put it this way. I actually kind of understand where Putin's coming from. I guess to simplify it, when he goes, look, we just want you to stay out of our fucking backyard. Like, I actually can sympathize with him a little bit when he says that kind of stuff.
Because he brought up how, like, so now we have nuclear weapons, like, what is it, Sweden and the Netherlands and all these different countries we're talking about having to join NATO. And all these Baltic states are literally on the border of Russia. And he brings up the idea that, like, imagine if America tried to put nuclear weapons in Canada or Mexico. And it's like, you know what? And yeah, Russia said that. Imagine if we tried to put nuclear weapons in, like, Canada or Mexico. And you know what? Like, Dan, honestly, we don't have to imagine. Because
it happened.
The Cuban Missile Crisis is pressed into our heads like America is this victor of fighting off communism. Because if you remember how that was taught to us, that's basically how it's taught to us.
Yeah, that
in the vacuum of American history.
You can call John F. Kennedy a hero in a lot of different ways, but the way that story is told is not exactly. Not exactly the way you learn. I should say this: the way you learn it in an 8th grade social studies class is a pretty oversimplified version.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. It's like
because we know how America would respond if Russia did to America what America does to Russia constantly.
Or, I mean, he talked about. And
then again, this is immediately making us sound like Putin apologists and Russian apologists, and it's like, no, that's not what we're doing.
But you have to understand.
We're adding important context to the conversation.
You have to understand where he's coming from, and it was I wouldn't say it was eye-opening in some ways, but in a lot of ways, just because we're nerds about this stuff, a lot of it was just shit that, like, we'd already heard from various other sources. But, like, you know, the Yugoslavian war stuff, I didn't really know a whole lot about. You know, the fact that there was just a lack of respect from in Putin's view. There was just a lack of respect from the U.S. when it came to military endeavors for separatists in the Northern Caucasus. Like, I didn't know a whole lot about that. Like, imagine if there were separatists in Mexico, right? And the U.S. was backing the Mexican government to fight off the separatists, and Russia sent money or aid or weapons or human beings to fight for the separatists. Imagine what we would do.
Or flip it. We were backing the separatists,
and they were defending the Mexican government. Either way.
Yeah, because that's literally what it's been with Russia for the last 50 goddamn years. Is one of us backing the government, the other one's backing the separatists. It's the reason why the whole Middle East is fucked. It's the reason why a bunch of countries in Africa are fucked. Like, it's literally what it's been with us. Just stifling economic growth, stifling the chance of freedom and the chance of liberties being entrenched in these other countries, because we've been doing this bullshit tit for tat for 50 goddamn years. And everyone in the, like, going back to what we were talking about originally in our podcast about, like, the privilege we have to bitch about things, right?
Being so far
like
away.
And this is me, like, go ahead, call me a stooge for, like, the way we acted with imperialistic tendencies throughout all of this, throughout the last 50, 60 years in Europe and the Middle East and South Africa and stuff. Like, Russia isn't innocent. They were doing the same shit we were in all of these countries. And, like, it's a whole separate conversation of, like, should we have responded the way we responded when Russia was doing the same shit that we were doing in other countries at the same time? Like when we talk about our imperialistic tendencies, where there was areas where there wasn't imperialistic tendencies of America, there were imperialistic tendencies of Russia, and we were combating them. And it was
The
literally
Soviet
a
Union at the
chess.
time.
Yeah, the Soviet Union at the time. It was
Well, and
literally just
isn't
a
that-
giant chessboard of us advancing, and then us on the back foot trying to stop an advancement. And then on the flip side, it was Russia trying to stop an advancement and them advancing. And it's just
interesting. It's an interesting thought experiment, Corey. Is that in like a weird way of like us, the West, I should say, winning the Cold War, maybe a bad thing in that way? Because we were so autonomous for, as Tucker Carlson put it, when we were in a unipolar world shortly after the Cold War, you know, and up through, I don't know, the next 15 or so years. Just this American hubris that we could just run around the planet and do whatever the fuck we wanted without being checked in any way, shape, or form by something like the Soviet Union.
No, I'm actually glad you say that, because I was listening to the Fifth Column today, and Matt Welch put it so well that we're in a moment of a long-term decline of post-World War II international order, and America is the most accidental empire that has ever happened in history.
Yeah, it's interesting. An accidental empire.
Because we got thrusted into a position post-World War II when in all of Europe, the only other center of like industrial economic growth was decimated. And we got put in this position where we had to fight off communism and help them rebuild.
Yeah.
And we were
because,
the only country positioned to do it.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. That's fair. I dig that. I dig that assessment. Matt Welch is a brilliant man. Not Matt Walsh. Matt Welch.
No, Matt Welch. Yeah, there's two
have to
very
clarify.
different people. You have
Yeah.
to. Because
You have
I've
to
told
clarify.
friends, like, yeah, listen to this podcast. His name's Matt Welch. And they're like, wait, what? The guy from Daily Wire? I was like, no. Matt Welch. Welch, W-E-L-C-H. Not the same last name as me, but W-A-L-S-H. Matt Welch from Reason Magazine, not Daily Wire.
The last thing I had on Putin, and if you have anything else, Corey, you can feel free to throw it out there. But the last thing I had on the Putin Tucker interview was Putin's view of China. And the way he explained this I'm sorry, folks, like it made complete sense. China is Russia's neighbor. They share like a 2,000-mile long border with China.
Like we do with Mexico.
This is a situation where you can't, like, and Putin put it pretty well. He goes, you can't choose your neighbors. But it is in your best interest to tolerate at worst, and I'm paraphrasing what he said, but like tolerate and work with it. It always, it's just always a good idea to be on the good side of your neighbor in these situations. And so when you think about the United States, and after Russia invaded Ukraine, cutting Russia off from the dollar, not being able to trade in dollars with certain other countries because the United States said they weren't allowed to anymore. When you had this narrative, this is a brilliant narrative. It is absolutely true. When you did that, you had all of these folks coming out and saying, when you do this, you're pushing Russia into the arms of China. Yeah, you did.
100%.
That's exactly what you did. That's exactly what you did by sanctioning them. That's exactly what you did by cutting off countries' ability to trade with the Russians using the United States dollar. And like nobody on Capitol Hill seems to see it that way.
They don't. I still don't buy into the idea that the American dollar is dead at this point. BRICS is based on it's the best thing that people have to try to combat the idea that they might be sanctioned. But you have countries like, what is it, Argentina? Is that where Javier Milei is?
Yeah.
Is it Argentina?
Yep.
You know, he's insulating himself to be the leader of that country by changing the currency of his country to the American dollar. In Argentina. Now, if anyone knows history, Argentina was awfully friendly to like Nazi Germany and all that stuff. And like now here's this guy, he's coming in saying that we're going to make the government as small as possible and we're going to create our economy on the dollar. So there's still leaders in the world that like think the American dollar still has like weight to it. There's still a ton of countries that still trade in the dollar.
But it's diminishing quickly.
It's diminishing on our own fault, but we could turn that around. Of course.
Fucking stab myself. Sorry.
Don't do that.
I stabbed my finger with a corkscrew. It's bleeding like a sieve.
It's because all the goddamn alcohol in your system.
Good thing I don't have to. No, I was just sitting here and I put my hand down and that thing is sharp as shit. My God. Anyway, go ahead.
No, that's it. I was about to say I really, really have to go pee, so I was gonna bring Bella in to have you guys riff while I do that.
I mean, I gotta pee too. So, should we take a break? Have we ever? We've never done that before. We could just end the show, dude.
We're an hour.
I know we had
more in.
I know we had more to talk about, but yeah, we can kill it here.
I could literally just go like this, and we could just take a quick break.
Nah, fuck that. We can end the show. It's all right. The only other thing we were going to talk about was what was going on in Rafa.
It's a big deal, actually.
It is,
but that I don't want to rush into Rafa and just try to rush through 5 minutes of it just because I have to pee.
No, we're not going to do that.
The Absurdtive Podcast is found on all social media and podcast platforms. Our website is absurdiveshow.com, and we can be found at Absurdive on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Instagram and Twitter at LibSurdivePod. Our TikTok videos can be found at Libsurdive Podcast, and you can reach out directly at libsurdivepod@gmail.com. Subscribe today.
Not yesterday. Or yeah, definitely yesterday. Not tomorrow. Anyway, for Bell the Bodysnatcher, he has always been Corey Walsh.
He's Dan Griffin.
It's been Libsurdive, intellectual idiots fostering political and cultural literacy. And until next time, we are out of here.